Thank you for tuning in to Think Tech Friday. We're raising public awareness about technology, energy, globalism, and diversification. I'm your host, Attila Seress. If you've ever seen anything that's 3D before, then you've come into the 20th century. Wait, 21st century. There we go. And today we're here, very privileged, with two young guys, Nolan Mugvaleda and Russ Ogi. And they are from Giraffe Tech, Hawaii, and 3D Corp Management. They're tenants of the Manoa Innovation Center, and they have a unique approach to not just 3D printing, but the entire 3D design process. And we're here today to talk about what they're doing to help educate the community and to improve some young people's quality of life and help them get into the 3D design community themselves. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, before we get too far into the show, though, we always like to have a small segment to start off the show called App of the Week. And have you guys ever been to an internet cafe or someplace where there's public internet and you wonder, wow, why is it so slow? Must be because everyone's watching Netflix, right?
Right.
Well, there's an app for that, and it's called Speed Test. And I'm going to hold this up for our viewers who are tuned in online. Of course, you can tune in online at ustream.tv, and you can join the conversation at 296-5467. And of course, you can always join us in the studio audience. Just give Jay Fidel an email. His email address is jay@fidel.com. Now, for our Ustream viewers, you can see that there's a nice little app I'm holding up on my iPad. And when I click the button, it's going to look and see how fast our internet here is at the office. This app is called Speed Test, and it's made by Ookla. And take a look at our internet speed. Wow, it's jumping up over 5 megabits here. Take a look at that. Wow,
Pretty cool.
we have some good internet here.
Absolutely.
And of course, if you've tried this on your home, it's going to be not as fast as this because we're in a great, beautiful studio. But it's a good way to test if you're in a public space and you're wondering why the internet is so slow. This will tell you exactly what's going on.
Wow.
So that's our cool tech app of the week, Ookla's speedtest.net app.
Awesome.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
well, Nolan and Russ, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourselves? What's your background and why are you here?
Well, I guess I'll start.
Sure.
Well, I actually we started off with Draft Techie, and that's basically my, I've been doing that for well over 10 years. And basically, it's an architectural drafting and design company. And because I was doing it for more than 10 years, I wanted to expand it. So incorporating 3D with the 3D industry. And that's when my longtime friend, Russ, decided let's get together, collaborate on those ideas, and that's when 3D Corp Management was born.
And so the two of you got together and with this mission of creating 3D for everyone,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And what is 3D for everyone? Is that the training process, or is it a software package, or what is this?
Actually, I'm going to let you explain it because
Thanks, Russ.
that 3D for everyone is actually the concept that you, when we first started talking about partnering up together, that was actually the concept that you
Okay.
you sold me on, I think.
Absolutely. Well, 3D for everyone is, we thought, you know what, there's a lot of technology thing that's going out there. When you look at Disney, when you look at the movies, everything is going into the 3D industry.
Kids shows too.
Yeah, absolutely.
They used to be hand-drawn. What happened?
Absolutely, it's 3D, it's technology. So why not open up a training center where now we can teach people from all walks of life that wants to diversify or even learn, even have an inkling of a 3D industry, that they can go to a training center and learn the basics of 3D modeling. 3D, you can do it on the computer, like for example, Google SketchUp. The great thing about Google SketchUp is that it's free. You can actually go to, you can actually type in and Google it, SketchUp, and then you can download it for free. And you
So
can
it's
start
a free app from
Absolutely.
Google.
Yes.
And allows you to make, what, 3D
Anything,
environments?
you know what? Anybody that doesn't have that experience in the 3D industry can actually go in a couple hours. They can actually start building something in 3D.
So
And
like
that's
what,
a
like
great thing.
homes or
A
characters?
Characters, anything. And then from there, they have tons of tutorials online.
Now, for those of you tuned in to our website, our ustream.tv live stream, you're looking at a variety of 3D items here that I'm guessing are the child of Google SketchUp type applications, right? So
well,
you create something in Google SketchUp and print it out
Right.
in 3D. So there's this alien-looking mask. I'll put it up to my face. There we go. And we have some RoboCop, like a big RoboCop helmet.
Right.
Something that looks like Blue Man Group meets Max Headroom here. So that's kind of cool. And obviously little smaller things like little house plans and all this boring architectural stuff. Compared to alien masks, you know.
Some of these models were actually designed in SketchUp. They're SketchUp models. The house models, little church models. Some of those are designed in SketchUp, and you know they're done very nicely. And SketchUp actually has a lot of power. When I first started talking with Nolan about this idea of doing a training center, and you know he presented the idea of, hey, let's start this up and let's use SketchUp as sort of a flagship program. I thought it was a perfect idea. I had been working with the schools previously to this, and you know, one of the programs that I was working with the schools on was SketchUp. Part of the reason being is some of the schools I would go to, you know, I went to the schools presenting the idea of getting the students involved in 3D printing. One of the big hurdles was that they either didn't have a 3D CAD program or, and you know, the funding. They're always concerned about funding.
3D CAD programs are expensive, aren't they?
You know, they used to be. Since 3D printing has come out, there's been a lot of programs put out, smaller programs, some of them very limited in capability. But a lot of these are free or they're low cost. SketchUp happens to be one of those. One of the reasons why I started working with SketchUp from my side of things, from the 3D printing side, is because they did have a free version. They had a free model for SketchUp. And so it was available for students to download. And as I worked with some of the schools, I found out that some of the teachers were actually able to assign SketchUp homework, because the students were able to download SketchUp at home and go home and do homework at home, then come back to the school, and the lab would be fully set up with a program like SketchUp. And so that using SketchUp allowed a lot of these schools that didn't have an existing CAD program to start up and get their feet wet with a CAD program. Subsequently, a lot of them then went on to add and expand their 3D CAD programs utilizing other software.
So it was a good starting point. And if I remember correctly, a few months ago I looked into SketchUp, and it was a Google depreciated project. So they've released the source code to the community now. So that ensures that it's not going to be a paid piece of software later on.
Right. In fact, interestingly enough, that they do have grants now that anybody in the school can actually apply for the grant, and they can have the pro version, which is roughly about $600, a paid version of it, and that can do more stuff than the free version.
Oh, we can put that onto one computer, and then the students can come and share it.
Yes.
And so they create something in SketchUp, and what are the typical classes that they're learning? Like, what are they creating?
You know, largely
Alien masks?
not yet. I'm working on that. Largely, you know, a lot of this is starting out. The 3D printing technology in general is largely an engineering product design technology. I mean, that's really where the technology started from. A lot of the CAD technology likewise started off from the engineering side. Architecture now is very heavily, correct me if I'm wrong, very heavily now into the 3D CAD design.
Yes.
So a lot of these programs in the schools are engineering based. But you know, myself personally, I'm actually an artist by heart. And so of course, you know, I ended up working with a lot of engineering programs, a lot of great engineering programs out there in Hawaii. But you know, I would love to see, and I've been working with the schools with different programs to try to expand out the CAD programming into other fields, especially the art field.
So CAD programming into art, and these are some of the projects that you've created, right?
A couple of these pieces are actually from in 2010. I started actually doing art exhibitions.
Oh.
So I started
Here in Hawaii.
Here in Hawaii, and I started for many years. I was running a rapid prototyping company in Honolulu, and while I was doing that, I worked on a lot of engineering, product design, some architectural projects, medical projects. But being an artist, I'm looking at all these models that I'm making, and I'm like, I want to create something creative. I want to be an artist with this technology, and that's really where some of these models started to come about, and that's where I really started taking more of an artistic license with the technology.
So you're looking at two different angles. We're going to talk about engineering, and we're also going to talk about 3D design in terms of art. That's really fascinating. Well, we're going to have to go to break for just a moment. Our topic is today 3D graphics have come of age, here with Russ Ogi and Nolan Mugvaleda, and we'll be back after this commercial break. Stay tuned. We're back, we're live, and you're listening to Think Tech Friday. I'm your host, Attila Seress, and we're talking about how 3D graphics have come of age. And, a lot of action happens during our commercial break, so if you heard any of that laughter, that just means we're having a good time here at the studio.
Yeah.
And, of course, if you do want to join the conversation, give us a call at 296-5467. join us in the studio by giving Jay Fidel an email. His email address is jay@fidel.com. And of course, you can tune in live on ustream.tv, Spreaker.com. Just go to our website, thinktechhawaii.com, and you can pick up all those links there. When we were last talking before the break, we were talking about Google SketchUp, this new project that Google's had out for a few years now that enables anyone to make anything in 3D. That's everything from architectural plans. Those of you tuned in, I'm holding up a architectural plan in my hand that was printed out by a 3D printer, as well as art projects. And we have a Kikaida mask here, which is a multicolored, you know, maybe I'm not the best at explaining this, Russ. Why don't you tell me what this is?
Well, Nolan, you're a big Kikaida fan. Would you like to introduce the character?
Well, you know, growing up back in the, I would say the 80s, they had this character called Kikaida. And anybody that's Generation Kikaida would know this, that it's like a mechanical machine guy.
Like an android?
Yeah, it's an android, actually. An android.
You know, this is a tech show. We can
Right. So the fun, yeah, that's basically where I guess Russ was inspired to actually make this head.
Well, all I know is that this is a USB connection here, and if it's not FireWire, I don't know, guys. This is kind of slow.
Well, you know, you've got to remember, Kikaida was an Android from the 70s. For the 70s, USB was very advanced. So he's actually kind of ahead of his time there. That particular piece is actually one of the pieces from my early art exhibition. But the first art exhibition I did was back in 2010. And, you know, again, I was talking a little bit about it earlier. I was running a prototyping shop, and so I had all these prototype clients coming into me to do prototypes, and, you know, I was doing handheld devices, all the, you know, like little controller devices and stuff.
Handheld.
Handheld, you know.
Like a remote control, or like computers that are handheld?
You know, unfortunately, one of the problems with being in the prototyping business is you can't talk about a lot of the projects you do because they're all proprietary.
So we're on the show. We're on the. No one's listening, right? You can just tell us.
Wait! You told me there are like 5 people listening to this.
Times 1,000.
No.
Or 20,000.
There you go.
No. Well, now we got stage fright. No.
That's okay.
But you know, So I've got to be vague in a lot of these projects because they haven't gone out to market. So I've been working. We'll call it a remote control for argument's sake. You know, remote control, camera housings, stuff like that. They're really cool projects in themselves. But being an artist, you know, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at 3D printing. I'm like, I could do some pretty crazy stuff with this. And so I put together a show with another local artist. He was named Vernon Rieta. He's actually a Kung Fu Sifu. It was actually my Kung Fu Sifu. And he is a surrealist painter. So, you know, I met him, we started talking. He saw the potential, the same potential in the technology that I did. And so we decided to do a collaborative show. Did that in late 2010, and Vernon had this really interesting idea. Whenever you go to an art show, typically the artists have a biography of themselves, and it's usually a painting and it's usually a printed sheet with a picture of the artist that kind of tells you a little bit about.
Kind of like Facebook. Yeah.
Kind of like Facebook on a sheet of paper,
There you go.
usually taped to a wall, but. Vernon had, I thought it was a really great idea. He said, well, look, we're doing a sculpture show with 3D printing. Let's have a sculpture biography. Let's make our biographies a sculpture. So I
That's one of the first things they make you do in art class. Draw yourself, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so I thought about that, and I was like, you're right. You know, if it's a drawing class and they make you do a drawing of yourself. So because we had a sculpture show and as a 3D sculpture show, we should have a 3D sculpture biography. So I thought that was great. So I started thinking about, for myself, you know, what would I do for myself? How would I describe myself? What would be my self-portrait in sculpture form? And, you know, and you know, Nolan was talking about Generation Kikaida. So that was, you know, the guys that grew up in the 70s. I think all the boys that grew up in the 70s in Hawaii, they grew up with Kikaida and Kamen Rider. And I know a lot of the guys now that I talk to, that I hang out with from that generation. They're like, yeah, I started riding motorcycles because of Kikaida and Kamen Rider. I started playing the guitar because of that. I got into the martial arts because of that. And honestly, those they fall into a genre of TV shows called tokusatsu. And there's the DVDs. There's sort of revival DVDs have come back out with Kikaida on it, and all these characters. And
I'll check my Netflix. Could be on there.
Not available on Netflix, unfortunately.
Really?
That would be cool though, because I'd probably be watching that all the time, driving my wife crazy. But the character was this red and blue character, and it was a really fun show to watch as a kid, and it really affected a lot of my aesthetics and a lot of my values, a lot of my even my aesthetics that for art. And so I thought, well, what better way to express my biography in sculpture format than to pay homage to Kikaida and try to integrate that in some way. So this particular piece right here was my bio sculpture, and
it looks remarkably similar to someone at this table. Could it be you?
Possibly.
Could it be you?
Possibly.
He looks cooler than you.
He's just painted.
Maybe if I painted myself, I would look cooler
And
now.
the sunglasses and the
Yeah.
the cables.
And I don't have USB cables coming out of my head, unfortunately. This was hanging in the art gallery, in the Lewis Pole Gallery when they're still downtown, and this would greet people as they walk in. This is hanging on the wall, and this has a lot of wires that kind of hung down from it to give it the. This is sort of morbid to say, I guess, now that I'm saying it out loud. Like a severed robot head. Didn't think it was morbid at the time, though.
That's very 80s sci-fi. Severed robot heads.
It's the severed robot head, and
because that's where everything is, right? In a robot.
In a robot. I thought it would be fun to play a little trick on the viewers that would come to our art show. So a lot of the wires in this sculpture piece are just dummy wires, and one of the wires is actually rigged to a functional webcam embedded into the piece itself.
Oh, so we have a webcam in here. So we have a 3D printed head that's been painted as a sculpture, and it's got a webcam inside.
And it's got a functional webcam and a bunch of wires hanging out. And so one of these wires kind of snuck its way over to a laptop and a computer monitor. And so people, while they're looking at this sculpture hanging on the wall, would catch a glimpse of themselves on the monitor. And they'd start looking around, trying to figure out where the camera was, and how they're on this monitor. And after a while, they'd realize that it was actually the sculpture kind of looking back at them as they were looking at it. So I thought that was a neat little, and it was around Halloween time, so I thought it was a neat little trick-or-treat trick.
That is cool. So, no, that's an interesting idea, because I think it's very difficult to integrate technology with art. It's one of those tricky subjects, and by being able to create your art piece in a 3D software environment, you can accommodate for all those variables, right?
Right, and I've done these projects where I've actually put electronics into housings for clients, and I was like, I could do so much with this as an artist.
You could greet people in blue head. There you go.
In blue and red, yes.
Now, of course, this is now everything that's a blue head is now Avatar, right? So,
Or Blue Man Group.
Or Blue Man Group. So it's kind of lost some of that power, right? But well, so tell me. So now that you have all this wonderful experience and this great exposure and all these ideas, how are you helping students to do the same thing?
Well, we spent some time earlier talking about SketchUp as a software, and it's a wonderful software. It's easy to get started with, and it's available. There's a free version available for it.
But that's the gateway, right?
But it can be, and that's where I've seen some schools. I've worked with some of the schools that have transitioned over into engineering software like AutoCAD. But there are a number of schools, and we've talked about engineering, architecture, the 3D CAD in those fields. Now there is an entire other segment in more of a creative, more on the creative side. This is largely 3D for entertainment, for TV and film. So movies like when you watch Shrek and Iron Man and Spider-Man, what are they on, 12 or something now? 12th iteration of Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. I
Spider-Man
don't think they're going
12?
to stop.
No,
I don't like the new Spider-Man so much. Did you like the new one?
He looks like a
Kinda
basketball.
dark. But
Yeah,
basketball
but
too.
it was the same story.
It's actually a different story
Yeah,
than the original.
a little bit. It's like, oh, he doesn't really shoot webs. He made his own little tech
that-
webs.
That kind of. Yeah.
Everything else is the same.
That is another red and blue character.
Oh, so you think
There's
that's
a-
where it came from?
No.
It's red and yellow here, though. Oh,
Well,
there's
no,
some
that's
red in-
that's yellow and blue, and
Oh,
that's
yellow
it.
and blue.
But not Spider-Man. So anyway, there are a lot of programs out there that are a lot of great programs on the art side that are utilizing CAD in a different fashion. So they're that's right. That's where we grabbed Spider-Man into this whole conversation, and they're developing their skills in CAD to make movies, Toy Story, movies like Paranorman, all of those things, and they're also using it for video games, for video game designs, and primarily there's a program called Maya that utilizes 3D CAD and puts it out for the entertainment industry.
Now, Nolan, what do you use?
I use SketchUp, and I have many years' experience with using AutoCAD as well.
Oh, AutoCAD.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's more engineering based.
Yeah.
Can you create art projects with that too?
No.
Oh wait,
Never
you were
done
supposed to say
3D.
I'll give you the answer after the break.
I'll give you the answer after the break.
We'll leave our audience hanging. You guys are listening to Think Tech Friday. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. We're back, we're live, and you're listening to Think Tech Friday. I'm your host, Attila Seress, and we're talking about how 3D graphics have come of age. And joining us today is Brother Nolan and Uncle Russ. and And of course, commercial breaks are a fun time for us to chit chat. And if you want to tune into the conversation, you can always listen to us on Spreaker.com. That's over the internet, and on Ustream.tv. You can tune in and see all of our wonderful 3D printouts that are on the desk here. But before we jump back into the conversation, I wanted to talk a little bit about, did you go to Tuesday's event there at Blue Startups?
Fortunately, I missed that event.
Oh, it was really interesting. You know, you're tenants of the Manoa Innovation Center, right?
Yes, we are.
And at the Innovation Center, it's an incubation program. So they try to get you started and get you accelerated. And Blue Startups is doing now the same thing. And it's interesting, you know, in going to their event, I didn't realize exactly their model and how it was the same but different from what MIC was doing. So MIC is more of an incubator. So they get you started, they offer you guidance and the connections that you need to get moving, right? And that's, you know, I'm there as well, so I get what's going on. And it is unfortunate that Yuka is leaving us and you know, she's moving on, but in some ways, you know, a change of leadership always leads to new ideas, and you know, I think Len is also a good friend of mine. He's going to do great, Len Higashi, so he's going to be the interim director for MIC.
Wow.
Now, Blue Startups, it's fascinating. They took a working model of a accelerator on the mainland, and according to Hank Rogers, who's the rock star, I guess, behind Blue Startups, right? He looked out and he said, you know, why reinvent the wheel and create an accelerator of my own when there's working ones on the mainland? So he did some, I guess he sent out some scouts and they found the best one, and then they either adopted it or purchased it, whatever they did. They took that model, and they have a 3-month accelerated program where they focus each month. First month, I believe, is on customer identification. Second month is something else. Third month is something else. At the end of those 3 months, you're pitching in front of investors in Silicon Valley.
Nice.
So there's a grooming process, and of course, as being entered into that program, they're constantly over your shoulder, making sure that you're actually doing the right thing to get you accelerated, to work you to that point where you can start getting that venture capital. So it's an interesting program. It's an interesting approach, and each class is considered. It's called like a cohort. So cohort from a psychological perspective is a group of people who have a common understanding. So, for example, you know, our parents' cohort couldn't figure out how to program the VCR, so they flashed 12 o'clock probably throughout most of our childhood, right? So our cohort probably knew how to program a VCR and took that information and programmed the VCR, right? So our kids now are not going to be looking at VCRs, but you get the idea is that there's different levels of knowledge. But I guess from their perspective, they're calling it like a class, and maybe they're calling it a cohort for the same reason, that the second class is now going to be much more advanced than the next, and they're now in the second cohort, and that second cohort is now going to go through its completion, and we'll see where they go. And in terms of dollars, of course, they do take a percentage of your company in exchange for some funding, so they do give you a little bit of capital up front. And of course, once you get that first round of funding, then there's second and third rounds of funding that they help you to acquire. And if anyone from Blue Startups is listening, I hope I've done you justice in my brief synopsis of the program. And it's a pretty exciting program because I kind of see Hank's vision in terms of trying to create an environment in Hawaii where tech is everywhere, and where our kids, well, I don't know if you have kids or not, but my kids can, when they become of working age, can go into a workforce that is comparable to the mainland, that they're not restricted to the type of jobs that they can have here and the incomes that they can have here. Sure. So I'm pretty excited for that opportunity there. I know that the accelerator program has a deadline. I believe it's end of this month or early to mid-August, and anyone can apply who has a valid startup idea, and there's of course there's interview processes and that kind of stuff too. So you know, I understand that the Innovation Center has had its challenges. You know, we're both tenants there, and we have been for some time. I've been there about a year and a half now, and it's been a fantastic program and a great thing. I just see that there is a horizon.
Right.
There is a horizon, and you know, we've done our best to keep it open and keep things going, and it's nice to see the torch being passed on to Blue Startups. So we'll see,
Nice.
and I know that there are other startups out there, and there's other accelerator programs that are they're going to be boosting our economy, and I really hope for all of our sakes that it works.
Absolutely.
And you know what?
Wow.
I think they're picking they've done their homework, and I think Blue Startups is going to be a good template for hopefully other startup accelerators to get us going here.
Right.
So, and with that, back
That's awesome.
after my little ramble, we'll talk about more back to this 3D software environment, and I really commend you guys on trying to bring that knowledge of that you have accumulated over 1 or 2 decades of this experience, and trying to introduce 3D software for people who want to go not just into engineering but art as well, because obviously we can't all be engineers.
Right.
We're not all great at math, but some of us are pretty good at art. And I think we met earlier in the week in my office, and we were talking about how 3D software is now a great outlet for artists. And you say that there's an art community now in Hawaii that's taking advantage of this.
Well, there are, I don't know if I'd so much call it our community, but at least in the educational field, there's a number of schools, public, private, even charter schools that have gotten into software they were talking about earlier called Maya. And they, with the idea that they're training students for the film TV industry as well as getting into the video game industry.
But you train all these students and they come out. Are there jobs for them here?
Well, in Hawaii, the movie industry, the TV film production industry is somewhat limited as it stands now. And the video game industry in Hawaii, I have a lot of friends that have started out in the video game industry. They're employed by companies like Konami, Mobile Core when they're around. Geez, that must have been early 2000s.
So no new versions of Street Fighter are coming out of Hawaii.
Probably not
Was
coming
that
out of
Capcom?
Hawaii.
No, it was
That was Capcom.
Yeah.
Street
probably
Fighter
last-
21.
That's probably the last was coming out with Spider-Man, coming out at the same time as Spider-Man 21. But the video game industry is a tough industry to get into to begin with, and in Hawaii there's not that many jobs. Largely, the video game industry, as I understand, has gone largely mobile. So a lot of these
You are right.
students,
You are correct.
so a lot of these students coming out now with these skills with Maya don't have much job opportunity in Hawaii. I've seen so many of them leave Hawaii. They're going to the mainland. But from what I understand now, the video gaming industry on the mainland's a really, really tight competitive market as well.
Yeah, we have schools here that train students on 3D software, correct? And
Yes.
then do they promise them jobs at the end of this?
As far as promising jobs, I think that depends on the program itself, whether they promise job placement. But as far as the opportunity, it's fairly tight. I mean, for myself, when I graduated back in '97, I started getting onto the workforce about 2000. I was one of the first people in Hawaii that had skills in Maya, and I thought I was going to be instantly employable, because I had this new skill set on this program that was going to be the hot new industry standard. Come to find out, when I started to try to find a job, I was instantly unemployable because nobody had Maya, and nobody could afford Maya, nobody could afford a Maya artist. So it actually made me very unemployable.
And yet you still had a student loan to pay back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Yeah.
But and that's one of the reasons. Eventually, I made my way into 3D printing, and I started utilizing my Maya skills for 3D printing, and subsequently, I started working with a number of different professionals from different industries, ranging from doctors to people in the forensics industry, as well as engineering, architecture. And I was able to consult with them, not because I had necessarily knowledge or skill set in that particular industry, but because I had a more creative background that I could adapt to 3D printing, and I could adapt to these different industries. And this is where it started occurring to me that students that are learning Maya have this same skill set. They're being trained creatively, and they're utilizing the same software that I'm utilizing to to consult with these different industries.
Well, Nolan, what was your experience coming out of school? Because it looks like you went to UH. Oh,
Well,
okay.
Leeward Community College, got a 2-year degree, went into drafting technology.
Okay.
And that's where I started. Soon after, started my own drafting business.
Are there drafting companies here in Hawaii?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So the difference obviously
Is it growing? Is it a...
Yeah, it is growing. And most of the time, though, some of these, they still go with the old school way of manual drafting versus people that went to college and learned AutoCAD. And of course, some of these drafting companies also utilize 3D SketchUp or some other 3D software in their services as well.
So, so perhaps someone who's going into drafting,
Yes.
in terms from a 3D perspective,
Right.
would have work. A student would have work coming out of school, but not necessarily someone with Maya. And Maya, was that for video games or is that for?
Primarily for the entertainment industry, so that would cover film,
Like
video, and
movies.
then movies and video games.
Well, good thing is, I believe we have a state tax credit now for
Yeah.
was it 25 million for?
For the movie industry.
Right.
There's yeah, I think that's a whole nother conversation.
It's another
and topic.
conversation, but can we get some jobs out of it? That's
You know,
the real answer.
I know we can get some jobs out of it. You know, and I've heard, I've actually been following that. You know, because some of the projects I've actually done have been on the creative side. In terms of developing props for different video, TV productions. Again, one of the problems with what we do is I can't talk about some of the latest and some of the most fun projects that we've done. But you know, so I've kind of followed the that industry, the movie industry, in terms of, you know, the tax credits and everything. And there's some debate about that as to how useful that's going to be.
Well, you know, I want to talk about where we're going, what we can expect in the next couple of years, and we have some great ideas. But our listeners are going to have to wait till we get back from the break. This is Think Tech Friday. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. back. Welcome back.
Illusion.
We're back. We're live, and you're listening to Think Tech Friday. I'm your host, Attila Seress, and we're talking about how 3D graphics have come of age. Here with us is Brother Nolan and Uncle Russ. They're tenants from the Manoa Innovation Center. Their new company, 3D Corp Vantage, is out there helping young people get introduced into the 3D software world. And of course, that's for the applications of engineering and for art, as well as, I believe, movies is what we're talking about, movies and entertainment industry. For those of you tuned in to our Ustream.tv live streaming, you can see all of our awesome 3D printouts and art projects here on the table. And of course, I'm holding up to my face here a 3D alien mask. That's very scary and has no way for me to look out of it. So this leads me to believe if I were to wear this and try to walk around, I'd walk into something and break it. So,
Not at all.
Yeah. I'm going to put this back on the table before I drop it. But this last segment, because this is the final part of the show, we only have a few minutes here. We'd like to talk about the future. And you're a very creative mind, Russ, and of course Nolan is a very scientific mind. So maybe the two of you have come up with some grand vision of the future that involves what you're doing. And let's talk about that. So give me your view, 5 years from now, your view from 30,000 feet, looking out the airplane window. What do you see us doing here in Hawaii?
A lot of the 3D that we're focused on is is intended to kind of tie in with the 3D printing aspect of things, and we're probably not going to be seeing mass manufacture here ever. Hawaii's environment's not going to stand up to it. The isolation, geographical isolation, but something like this technology coupled with the knowledge of 3D and really that's what Nolan and I started talking about, is the human side of things, and that's what we talk to people about, is a human aspect of this whole 3D printing revolution or innovation, however you want to refer to it. It really comes down largely to the human aspect, the human talent, the human understanding of how to use this technology.
So are we going to see more jobs in Hawaii due to 3D printing being taught to our students and having them be able to create 3D models? What are we going to see here from our kids who are learning this technology now?
I believe there are going to be more jobs, and even though Hawaii's...
There better be. There's a lot of people here. We need more jobs.
We're doing the best that we can right now.
We are, of course.
But, and I think we're actually starting to see some of that happening now, believe it or not. This technology's been, 3D printing has been in Hawaii for probably the past 8 years, and CAD technology has actually been in Hawaii longer than that. And it's a matter of, I think, understanding both technologies and how to best utilize them, which is really what 3D Corp Vantage is trying to do, is bring all these different components that are already out there, bringing it together to function. And I'm starting to see pockets of internships for companies where they're actually bringing in students that have an understanding in 3D printing, and they're looking for students that have that understanding, have the computer aided design, CAD understanding side of things.
Well, do you feel that Hawaii in 5 to 10 years time could be considered not just as a fun place to vacation, but as a place to do real business, to find excellent talent and precision work that we can then be known for, not just in Hawaii, but in the United States, but across the world? And I feel that if we train our young students now on how to create 3D things, wouldn't it be cool if we could get some of that mainland business, some
Absolutely.
of that international business? Because think about it, we are the closest point to Asia, and we're the furthest away from the rest of the United States. So we're like this perfect middle ground where we have this amazing culture here.
Right.
Everyone everyone is able to work together. It's a very cooperative place that we live in. Wouldn't it be great if we could change our world here to be better? And I think this may be one step to doing that.
Absolutely. What I always tell people is Hawaii's biggest asset is it's also its greatest detriment, which is a geographical isolation. Hawaii is so beautiful. And is so unique in the world because it's isolated. But at the same time, that's also part of the reason that has kept us out of doing a lot of product design, because, well, product design, at some point, you've got to get a physical object. If you're designing a mouse, at some point, you can do all of that in the software anywhere in the world.
Computer mouse.
Computer mouse.
Okay, all right. You said we're designing a mouse. I said, well, that sounds like biotech right there.
I will clarify that, computer mouse. Although engineering a real mouse, actually UH has done that, engineering the glow-in-the-dark mice.
Oh, really?
So we actually have done that. But
hopefully none are in the studio.
if we turn off the lights, we might be able to find them. But no, in terms of say something like a computer mouse, or maybe even a new type of cell phone, you can do that design, but at some point you've got to hold it in your hand to really test out ergonomics, see if the buttons are in the right place. And previously, if you were going to do that in an isolated remote location like Hawaii, well, now you've got to go back and forth with the mainland to try to get these physical copies, and it's going to take more time than it would be on the mainland. It's going to take more effort. It's going to take more cost. Now, with something like 3D printing, we know we can do the design work here, but if we take something like 3D printing and add that into the equation, now all of a sudden you can do the prototypes right here in the islands.
Well, are mainland schools also educating their kids?
Absolutely.
On how to use this technology?
Absolutely.
So we're just keeping up, really.
Well,
we can do better.
I would, and that's one of the visions I have, I think, for the future, is I don't want Hawaii to keep up. I'd like Hawaii to start taking over, moving ahead of not only the mainland, I want Hawaii to move ahead of
the international scene.
The international scene, thank you.
How about you, Nolan? What do you feel is our future here in
Is
Hawaii?
our future? Exactly what Russ said.
That's an easy out.
Stop looking at my notes.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I don't know if you guys have kids now, but suddenly that shifts your perspective.
Right.
It makes you think, well, all this is great for myself, but what about for my kids? What can I have for them?
Right.
What kind of environment am I bringing them into? What kind of schools are they going to go to? Because I'll tell you, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of challenges for us as parents coming up. So I appreciate the work you guys are doing, trying to get that. Now, can they go to your website, or do you have any sort of contact information if a school is interested in having you come in to?
Well, right
to get this program
now
started?
we do have a site, but it's under construction right now. We still have to build it.
So we do have a coming soon page. Had that
So
has
by
our
Monday,
contact on it.
Yeah, exactly.
they can go to what website?
3D Core www.3dcorevantage.com.
CORE.
CORE.
Like Apple Core.
Apple Core. Corevantage.com. VANTAGE.com.
And they can go there and find out about how they can contact you.
Yes.
Get you on board with some of those educational projects.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be really cool. Well, it's been a privilege to have the both of you on our show. Really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your views.
Well, thank you for having us on the show.
Thank you very
Really
much.
appreciate it.
Now, if any of you listening missed any part of this program, be sure to visit our website and download our podcast. It's in the archive. Go to www.thinktechhawaii.com. And of course, if you like our program, go ahead and like us on Facebook. This is Attila Seress. I'm the host for Think Tech Friday. Thank you to our chief engineer, Jack Waters. Our account manager is Patrick Leonard. Of course, he's got a Volkswagen Beetle just like me, so we always talk about it. So Jack is a good guy. Board operator is Leah Rodriguez. And of course, Leah, if you want to tune into our webcast, you can see our Kikaida picture right here. I know you wanted to see it during the show. Jay Fidel, he creates Think Tech. He makes Think Tech possible, and his passion just shows through every show. And thank you, the listener, for tuning in. We'll be back next week, but be sure to tune in on Monday with Jay Fidel for more Think Tech. Remember to appreciate life, do good to others, and have a great weekend. Aloha.